Blessings in Jesus, dear friends. My name is James Jacob Prash from Moriel Ministries. Thank you so much for watching us here on Moriel TV and its other platforms, Rumble, RTN, and so forth. We have Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org, and a host of other platforms. It is not our policy to appeal for money. We've only done it at certain times and never for ourselves or our own needs. The first time we did it was a very long time ago when we had the Chernobyl children over who were dying of leukemia from radioactive poisoning. That was many years ago. They were coming to England fighting for their lives, and we helped pay the medical costs. That was the first time. We did something for Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, and we did a major project, both working to support a church in Haiti after the earthquake, and also to make contributions to the Missionary Aviation Fellowship, who had some excellent pilots and some excellent planes that could land on dirt treks out in the country without having to funnel aid through Port-au-Prince. Now, it's only 3 times we've actually done this. This is only the 4th time we've done it. We don't do fundraisers for our own needs. We only ask the Lord. But when there are others in dire straits, such as after the earthquake in Haiti or things of that nature, what happened in Haiti, what happened in New Orleans, we have made appeals. We assure you that, first of all, what we need is, above all, your prayer. Prayer comes first. Secondly, we give you every assurance that every cent, every penny will go directly to the need. It will not come to Moriel. We retain nothing. We make sure every penny, every cent will go to where it is needed, to the beneficiaries. In this case, I, of course, speak of believers serving in the Israeli military. Now, if you're American or British, the Israeli military is very different than the military in the United States or the military in Great Britain. First of all, it's a civilian army. You've got far more people in the reserves, civilian soldiers, than you do active soldiers. Those in the active army are called keva. They're relatively small number of people, but in a war, the reserves, called the miluim, are called up. It is a civilian army, very much a civilian army. The people in keva will get most of the things they need from the army. The people in miluim, they're fighting for warm thermal socks. If they're up in the Golan, they're looking for batteries. They're looking for first aid kits and other things. We've been sponsoring 2 combat brigades. One of the combat units we're sponsoring is in the Golani Brigade, and another is at an frontline Air Force base where airstrikes against Hezbollah are launched from. Again, if you don't know the situation, most Israeli believers serve in combat brigades. They volunteer for combat. They feel it's part of their testimony. And the reports that we've had, we have to be careful of putting the photos in the public domain, but we have believing soldiers, or airmen, Navy, whatever, but mainly believing soldiers distributing the things we're buying, like footwear, to their comrades and saying, this is a gift from Bible-believing Christians who love Israel and who love the Jewish people in the United States, in Australia, in Great Britain, in New Zealand, in Canada, in wherever, in Europe. And it's a gift from them. And these believing soldiers are able to give it out. And it's a wonderful testimony, and it opens doors for witnessing and sharing the gospel. That is something that we're very much involved in doing. But there's also a organization, I'm hesitant to mention it. I don't want to get anybody in trouble with the religious authorities in Israel, but there's an organization that ministers to the needs of believing soldiers, both materially and spiritually, but certainly materially. And we are major supporters of them, and they have a tremendous need. They believe that this war is going to drag on for some time, and the needs are considerable. These are practical material needs, but also, of course, spiritual needs, the most important thing being prayer. Well, anyway, yesterday I received some terrible news from Israel. We reported last week of the death of a young Israeli soldier who was a believer in a combat brigade near Gaza. His name was David Ratner. Family is, of course, devastated. His father is a leader of a Messianic fellowship. We learned day before yesterday that a young Israeli woman in the military, she's an ensign in the Navy. Now, the Israeli Navy is not much of a blue water Navy. It's more like a Coast Guard type thing. Was killed in combat. Her name is Alina Provosopova. Alina Provosopova, one of Moriel's team members and a pastor of a church Moriel supports, visited her family today. And obviously, it's a terrible situation. She's in Haifa, where my children are born, where my wife's home is, where I lived for years. And she was killed, and she was only like 21. It's not easy for these believers, but they have a witness to other soldiers, other sailors, other airmen who are not believers in their Messiah, Yeshua. And as terrible as this war is, it also opens opportunities for witness and testimony. When they see believers love Israel at a time when anti-Semitism is going through the roof, a lynch mob attacked an airplane that landed in Russia, a Muslim lynch mob. The Brooklyn Bridge in New York was closed down. Grand Central Station in New York was closed down, in the biggest Jewish population center in human history in the world, in New York. The riots in London, 100,000, the riots at Paris, and the terrible, terrible lies we're getting on the media. Israelis are aware that the world is against them for fighting to survive, for daring to be alive in their own God-given country. They're condemned by so much of the world and so much of the left-wing media, so much left-wing politicians, and the lies are incredible. When they see Christians are their friends, saved Christians, who say, we love you because our Messiah was a Jew and you gave him to us, because our scriptures were written by Jews and you gave them to us. God gave them to us through you, through your nation and your people, and we love you. And we believe you're back in that land according to the prophetic plan of God. We love you. We don't care if the rest of the world hates you. We don't care if so many nominal Christians hate you. We love you, and we're going to stand with you. That is a witness and a testimony that's powerful, and it opens the door for Israeli believers to witness and share their faith and say, this is why these Christians love us. Look what the scriptures say. Look what the New Testament says. This is why they love us when everyone else hates us. This is a terrible situation. And terrible. My own son was in the Army in a frontline combat brigade. I know what it's like to have your kid there in a war. I know what it's like firsthand now. And I had a close relative killed, of course, on September 11th in New York, murdered by fundamentalist Islam. I know what it's like. I know what these people experience and go through. I know firsthand. It's not just something I watch on the news or see in the media. I know firsthand, and we're in contact with our own branch in Israel every day. We have people there who have sons and daughters in the military. Their lives are on the line. Moriel team members. So we not only covet your prayers, we desperately covet your prayers for the protection of those believers and for Israel. Even more importantly, we covet your prayers that God will use this situation as an opportunity for the gospel. What the devil intends for good, that God will use. The devil intends for evil, God will use for good. What the devil intends for good for his purposes, God will really use for good for his purposes, not for the good of the devil's cause, but for the good of God's cause. We've seen so many lies. Some of the things I see on the media are outrageous. they don't realize these same people who they're marching in favor of have admitted that they want to kill Christians. And the left wing is absolutely ludicrous, saying that they're pro-woman and pro-homosexual, not even taking into account what Hamas does to homosexuals and the way women are treated in fundamentalist Islamic societies by organizations, their Iranian sponsors. Now, these things very much are what was prophesied in considerable measure in the book of Daniel, chapter 10. We've been saying that for years. Satan would raise up Iran, the principality over Persia, a demonic power, to try to destroy Israel to prevent the return of Christ. He will not succeed, but it will not be for lack of trying. Satan is trying to destroy Israel. Many believers, people 18, 19, 20, many of them, are in frontline combat brigades. We've already lost two. And there's not a lot of believers in Israel. There's a lot more than there used to be, but you'll find almost all of them are in combat brigades. They're there. I once had a case where there was a Christian pacifist, a believer, criticizing my son for being in the Israeli military during a war. His grandparents, who were Holocaust survivors, were alive at that time. Their own parents had been killed. Most of my wife's family had been killed. And now my son's two aged grandparents were in a shelter with gas masks. And he was in the army, in a combat brigade, being criticized by someone who said they were a Christian. Christians shouldn't bear arms. Christians, you shouldn't defend your country, your home. You shouldn't defend your family, your aged Holocaust surviving grand. That's not Christian. That was his thinking. Now, he wasn't a bad man, but he was a very ignorant one. Well, very ignorant one. John the Baptist didn't tell the soldiers to stop being soldiers. With Cornelius, Peter did not tell him to stop being a Roman legionnaire. It depends on the circumstances. Jesus said to bring two swords. If you know what time the thief was coming, you'd protect your house. The New Testament does not condemn self-defense. It condemns returning evil for evil. Turning the other cheek means do not return evil for evil. It is not a New Testament prohibition against self-defense. The early Christians became pacifists because serving in the Roman military meant you'd have to participate in pagan worship services, sacrificing to Roman gods, the pagan deities, who the Christians considered to be demons before battles. They would have sacrifices to pagan deities, to which Christians would not participate. That was why they wouldn't serve in the Roman legion. Originally, Jewish believers joined the rebellion against Rome in the Second Jewish Revolt of the 2nd century. It was only when Rabbi Akiva proclaimed Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah that Jewish believers would not support the rebellion against Titus. I'm sorry, that was the first rebellion, against Hadrian. They wouldn't support Bar Kokhba because Rabbi Akiva proclaimed Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah, and he was a false Messiah. He was a type of the Antichrist, and Rabbi Akiva a type of the false prophet. The Jewish believers would not follow a false Messiah. Their faith was in the true one, so they ceased their participation in the rebellion. There were reasons in the circumstances why the early Christians would or would not fight in a war. And there are reasons now when and why a Christian should or should not fight in a war. The young believers in Israel understand not just that their cause is just and their cause is biblical, but they understand the importance of showing Jewish people, look, we are Jews, we are Israelis, We're part of this nation and people. We stand with you. We put our lives on the line. We volunteer to be kravi in combat brigades. And they're there. And they need our prayers. And they need our support. I leave it with you. Once again, we're not asking for anything from Moriel, not 1 penny, not $1, not £1, not 1 shilling, not 1 Swiss franc, nothing will go to Moriel. It'll all go to believing soldiers and to the distribution of help by believing soldiers to their comrades. That's what we're doing. We've been able to do a considerable amount already financially, but we need to do more. This thing is likely to drag on, we are told. Therefore, please keep this situation in prayer. Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Actually means inquire into the welfare. Inquire into the welfare, first of all, of the believers in Israel. And we've had 2 young believers killed already. Please pray. This is a bad situation. And also pray that God would raise his hand against this corruption in the media and militant Islam and these ridiculous people who pander to them and side with them against all reason, let alone righteousness. If anyone is led of the Lord to contribute to the fund we have to help the soldiers, just go to the Moriel website, to the donation page, the missions page, donation page for Israel, and in the comments, put Soldiers Fund. Doesn't matter what country, it'll come to the United States. We're coordinating out of the USA because it is easier to use dollars and funnel dollars into Israel. But please, please just keep these young soldiers, these young believers in prayer, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you so very much. God bless.